Welcome to Standard Theory. In the previous segments, we have explored some ideas that can be addressed using STEM psychology, including personality types and IQ. In this segment, we will explore a concept known as the science of organizations by using STEM psychology to address absolute thinking. In a previous segment, one aspect of absolute thinking was presented as the dynamic of communication of many people between many people, or the communication of many to many. This type of communication can be used to sort the purposes of forming groups of individuals in order to facilitate some sort of phenomenon. This is referred to as the science of organization and can theoretically be applied to any group of individuals who work under a specific set of rules in order to achieve something. This applies to governments, schools, businesses, laws and the legal system, sports teams, and essentially any group of people working together to accomplish something. The easiest way to address the purpose of any organization is to determine the ways that an organization differs from a random group of people. In that way, the factors which bring the organization together in a way that sets it apart from the random group of people can essentially define the organization. In the previous segment discussing absolute thinking, there were two discrete processes presented. Those processes were sorting processes referred to as directives and deferrals. The aspects of an organization can be accounted for using those sorting processes known as directives and deferrals. In theory, the set of directives and deferrals that are preserved by an organization are the main aspects which give meaning to that organization when compared to a random group of people. In law, for example, the knowledge of what is considered a crime as well as the punishments can be considered directives that are preserved by the organization of individuals responsible for upholding those laws. In politics, the views of social aspects and policies that are preserved by those organizations would be the defining directives of each respective political party. In the case of a university, the lessons and concepts that are taught to students would be defined as the directives being preserved by those organizations. The directives being used to conduct the operations of the organizations could be considered the main factors which set that organization apart from any random group of people. To give a counterexample, a random group of people who had not learned certain concepts or had not preserved some type of knowledge would not likely be able to operate as something like a university until those directives had been learned and upheld by that random group. In terms of a business, even if a random group of people work together to sell something, their set of directives related to the aspects of business such as distribution, marketing or sales would not necessarily be used or preserved in a way that would allow that random group of people to not only continue to sell something but to allow other random individuals to join in on selling that thing in an organized or easily understood way. The preservation of those types of ideas in the form of a high-energy interpretation of a situation for the purpose of completing a goal or achieving something can be considered the fundamental process which separates a random group of individuals from an organization. However, the term of directive can become ambiguous when considering the multiple aspects of each of those organizations, especially when considering things that organizations do not preserve or do not practice. When discussing non-standard versions of absolute thinking, there was presented the idea of a pseudo-directive. In that sense, the interpretation of a single sorting process was considered to be inconsistent. That does apply to a single sorting instance, but, in terms of organizations, there can be certain sortings to be considered. In law, for example, there are circumstances which can be sorted based on factors related to the case which correlates to the defense of a crime or likewise. In this sense, the interpretation of one version of this sorting versus another could be interpreted to mean that the sorting is associated with a pseudo-directive. However, since the sorting could be considered part of a standardized set of information in terms of defense in this case, the complete set of directives when sorting as well as the correlated deferrals when sorting, so long as each are upheld consistently throughout the organization, can be referred to as a factum. The term factum is used to describe a specific set of factors being upheld by an organization, whether those are related to a directive or a deferral in terms of preserving a standardized process. In that sense, the set of laws that are upheld by the justice system can be considered a factum of the organization of the justice system. Similarly, the best practices of standard operating procedure of a business can be considered the factum that is upheld by that business. In this way, the meaningful aspects of an organization can be identified and attributed in a way that gives inherent meaning to the practices of each respective organization in a way that sets that organization apart from any random group of people. The dynamics offered by standard theory in terms of absolute thinking and supersocial communication can be used to account for those processes within and between organizations. Please join me in the next segment where we will continue exploring the uses of STEM psychology by readdressing complex communication and its role in diagnosing mental illness.